Dun, 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 dun. That's as much as you'll hear me sing, because I will clear the room out if I do anymore. Thank you. I just want to applaud all of you who stayed. I appreciate it because I think that you're going to have the most fun of the day. So the folks that left, shame on them. We'll give them a hard time. They're going to miss it. So I want to announce back to the stage Matt Steiker and Kwaku Amudi.
No, you've got the clicker. You've got the clicker. You've got the clicker.
Oh my God.
This is not a bit, by the way.
No.
You've got the clicker. Do you have it?
Is my mic, can you guys hear me? Yeah.
Do you want to hear him?
Ah, there
Thank
we
you.
go.
Thank you.
There we go.
A little more of that energy, I think.
How's everybody doing?
Good? Good?
That's weak. How is everybody doing? Thank you.
So here's a question for everybody, and answer honestly with show of hands. How many people here know what code switching is? You guys, I figured. Wow, okay. More people than I thought. Great. Well, we're going to talk a little bit about it today and sort of how we think it might be a secret superpower to modern day marketing.
So we always start any one of our presentations just getting you guys to get familiar with us. So I am Kwaku Amudi. I am Senior Creative Director at Madden, and this is my esteemed creative partner. Matt, look at him looking. This is Matt Steiker.
This is the part where I never know what he's going to say or do next.
No.
Because he's the one who makes the slides,
yeah,
by the way.
I made all the slides.
Yeah.
So we've been working together for
Year and a half?
About a year and a half. It's probably the best year and a half you've ever spent. But we've formed a really good creative duo, I'd like to think. Wouldn't you say?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
So we like to start our presentations just by showing you a couple pictures of us that we've taken over our time together that speak to who we are.
And how we've grown together.
Yeah, so here we go. This is our first one.
Oh my God.
Right. He doesn't know.
I never know.
He doesn't know these are coming. Here's another one of us that we took recently.
Oh, I like that one.
I know.
I like that one. Yeah.
But then here's my absolute favorite
I think
one
I know
of
what
us
this one is.
that characterizes how our relationship working together has always been. You are my Mr. Drummond.
And you are my Willis. What you talking about?
What you talking
about? As we think about, so moving off from his silliness, as we think about sort of the current state of marketing, of the world today that we all face, there's a lot of dynamics that marketers really have to contend with. And to some extent, it's sort of the same thing that we've always been contending with, but to some extent, new dynamics change it sort of constantly. So this current state, for example, audiences are really fragmented. Our ability to talk to a distinct audience is fundamentally changed because everyone is allowed, through a digital platform, everyone is allowed to be their own network, to be their own community, to be their own self. So trying to reach them as a marketer becomes infinitely more complex.
Now, platforms are also overcrowded, even though you've got a bunch of them. Again, like if you think dating apps, if you think social apps, everybody at least has maybe 10 to 20 apps on their phone, things where they can be reached. But these platforms are overcrowded. It's like everybody is there doing the same things over and over and over and over again.
Yep, exactly right. And it ends up largely being that the messaging around reaching people ends up being really generic. We have found sort of this aggregate and boring middle space where we all talk to people in sort of the same way, in the same voice, with the same intonation, et cetera, and it ends up ultimately not really connecting with anyone.
So one of the things that Matt was very, very insistent on when I started was the third rail of destination marketing. And that third rail of destination marketing, if anybody's familiar with the third rail, and like, have you been to New York? Or the third rail is normally the one you don't ever want to touch. That's the electrocuted rail. But the third rail of destination marketing is something for everyone is dangerous.
We found this great quote, which is not directly about destination marketing, but we think it's still highly relevant to the experience that we have every day with destinations that we work with, and probably to the experience that many of you have. There cannot and should not be something for everyone. A restaurant with a menu the size of a book that claims to offer you American, Chinese, French, and Italian probably isn't serving up five-star cuisine. We've probably all been to those places. Maybe we've been to them domestically, maybe we've been to them when we've traveled internationally, but that's not the place that we know we're going to get the very best food. So that idea of something for everyone is to some extent really flawed.
Yeah, because it's not that you want something for everyone. When I'm traveling or when I'm picking a destination, I don't want something for everyone. I want something that's specifically for me. So, this is an interactive segment, so it's not going to be us talking to you the whole time. I do need you guys to talk back. Are you with me? Yeah. That was 6 people again. Are you with me? Yeah. All right. So here's a question. How many of you are familiar with the movie Jerry Maguire? Show of hands. Okay. My question is, was Jerry Maguire a sports, and we do this in every presentation, and he always loses, so spoiler alert, he's going to lose. Was Jerry Maguire a sports movie or a romantic comedy?
Now, before you answer, I say sports movie. And I say sports movie because you have phrases and expressions that became part of our common vernacular. Show me the money, right? There are all of these hidden cues and clues in the movie that are about the relationship between Cuba Gooding Jr. and Tom Cruise.
But you are 100%
hang on
wrong.
1 second. That was what it was all formed around, and they used that messaging rather, to target men on ESPN. So that's what I'm watching, and I'm going, it's a sports movie.
And this is why you're wrong. It was a rom-com, and here's why.
Okay.
We'll do this with the room. He's about to lose. Ready? I want you guys to finish this statement with you. If you've ever watched the movie, you had me at.
Whatever.
Do I need to say anything?
I could have done show me the.
But you didn't. That's
Right.
why you lose. All right. So, by show of hands, how many think it was a sports movie?
Oh, man. Thank you. Thank you.
There's always 1 or 2.
Thank
That's
you.
fine. Thank you for making him feel good.
Yeah, exactly.
How many thinks it was a rom-com? The answer is going to surprise you, though, because it was actually both. Well, because you've seen this already.
Yeah.
But here's the genius of it, though. Even though it was marketed to men in one way and to women in another way, it satisfied both because it learned how to communicate 2 different ways to 2 different audiences. And that's what brought us to exactly what we're talking about today.
That singular story authentically made relevant to multiple audience is ultimately the core of what it is that we're talking about today.
So, what is code switching? By definition, it is a practice of adapting one's language, style, or tone to fit a specific audience or cultural context, essentially changing how they communicate depending upon who they're trying to reach.
When we first started talking about this, just about a year ago, I think it was, I think maybe just finished the book James. I don't know if any of you have read James, but I had just finished, and I had just, for the first time in my very white life, learned what code switching was. I'd never heard the expression before, and certainly if somebody had asked me what it was, I wouldn't have known what it was. And when I was talking about it with Kwaku, he was like, yeah, I've been doing it my whole life. He had experienced this his whole life. So do you want to talk just a little bit about your experience and sort of how you experienced code switching before we go through some of the rest of it?
So for me as an African-American male, code switching was something I grew up in. That was actually survival for me because I couldn't be who I was at home and who I needed to be at school or work or in any other circumstance. Because if you'll catch me on the phone with a bunch of my friends, I don't generally always sound like this.
White.
But again, and it wasn't more, for me, it was survival.
Yeah.
But there is a larger, when we started talking about it, the beautiful thing that happened was there's this larger idea of it though, that, because I knew, when we're talking about marketing, I knew ads that didn't speak to me. I knew things that were tone deaf, and we saw them a few years ago, where all I was asking was, who was in the room making the decision? And I knew there was no one like me making a decision in the room.
For sure.
There was nobody like me giving input.
For sure.
So it's been a huge part of my life, but I'm glad that we're bringing it. I'm glad that we've kind of elevated it and brought it to a place where it's something that destinations could and should be using in every single time they communicate with other people.
One of the requirements, I think, of this, we'll talk a little bit about, is the ability to sort of check your bias. And it's a hard thing to do. And it's a hard thing to do for people who have never been asked to or expected to check their bias before. But I remember a moment when this became very, very, I guess, like immediately personal to me. Kwaku and I were walking down a street in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. This is last year at some point. And it was probably like early evening, not pure dark, but early evening. And we came around a corner and there was an older black man walking along. And I didn't notice it. Oh no, I did notice it because he nodded at us and Kwaku nodded back. And I was like, what was that? Like, help me understand what just happened there. And there was a language that was happening there that I didn't speak, that I wasn't privy to, that I wasn't aware of. And the explanation was basically that he was just checking to make sure that Kwaku was okay. That the nod was, are you good? And Kwaku's nod back was, yeah, I'm good. I don't speak that language. I didn't notice, or I didn't know what was happening there, but that was a language that was being spoken differently. And so as we started talking about that moment and moments like it, realized that, to what Kwak just said, there's a much larger thing happening here, which, yes, for sure is about race, but is about how marketers have the ability to communicate with different audiences in a way that acknowledges them very authentically.
And even, I love what you said about biases though, because even outside of racially, I'm even learning about biases that I didn't have before. Because we spoke to an individual that was talking about, differently abled people and about privilege. And her first words were that everyone is privileged. And I'm sitting on the phone thinking, no, we're not. But then her example was, if you can see, you're privileged to someone who can't. And it kind of changed the way that I look or feel about biases as well too, because we all are.
Yeah.
So, why does code switching matter? Easy, it deals with diversity. But in digitalization, like we were saying, the world is a lot bigger digitally now. Where you could just market one message to someone. Now, there are so many new different ways, and it's not as expensive to market to a bunch of different people now. Now it's localized more than it ever has been.
And there's a real demand for authenticity as well. In those communications, people are seeking some level of authenticity from a brand, a destination, whoever it is that they are buying from or experiencing something with. They want authenticity and they want true and real engagement.
Yeah, and consumer behavior is something that people are people are more engaging than they have been before. Everybody's got a phone, everybody's recording. Video is different than it's been before. Now everybody's a newscaster. You have to now parse through what's real news and what's not. Because my son, who's 16, God bless him, will bring me articles. He brought me an article about a ghost. And he was like, Dad, there's ghosts in Indiana. I'm like, there are not ghosts in Indiana. He's like, no, there are. And he showed me a picture.
By the way, he's deathly afraid of ghosts, just for the room to know.
I don't know who's not. But anyway. No, but it was this art, but it was literally a picture with words on it. And I said, son, you can't believe everything you read. He's like, but no, but it's news because it's here. So that's the scariest part about today.
Absolutely. So we have a couple of case studies that we want to share with you. So how we view how some brands are maybe intentionally, maybe not, stepping into this space a little bit, but at minimum, we feel like give us the opportunity to step more actively and more deliberately, more intentionally into this space than other destination brands have.
First example, Spotify. How many of you guys have Spotify or listen to Spotify? Okay. So you know, it feeds you not what it thinks you like, but what you've told it you like. So it's not biased, it's just reactive to what you have. Our playlists are completely different. Yours is yacht rock, right?
Okay.
Right?
Guilty.
Yeah.
Guilty.
And
Sure.
mine might be something completely different and awesome.
For example. Yeah,
No example.
of course.
No example.
Of course. I had an opportunity a couple of months back to meet the brand new CEO of Nike and had a really interesting conversation with him. And the interesting thing to me that's happened with the Nike brand over the years is that it started out really as a running brand and as a basketball brand in the sort of late 70s and through the 80s and into the 90s. That's how we knew it. But Nike at its core was really all about empowering the athlete in all of us. That's what it wanted to do, and that's the strategy effectively behind a tagline of Just Do It that we've all come to know over the years. Over the years, too, what they've done is they've added tennis, and they've added golf, and they've added skateboarding, and they've added et cetera, et cetera, et cetera into their repertoire. What's happened over the years, though, is Just Do It still means the same to every one of those athletes, despite the vast differences between an athlete who's a skateboarder and an athlete who's playing tennis, and an athlete who's playing golf and an athlete who's playing football. Just Do It remains at its core something that is directly relevant to each one of those because they're getting out of that experience what it is that they want to get out of it.
Next example is Netflix. Now, they ran into some trouble a couple years ago and they were in the news because there were a number of people who were saying that their Netflix feeds were a little racist. Because if you look at certain feeds, they have an algorithm that will feed you certain characters from a show based on other shows that you know, and they justified this. So it wasn't necessarily that. It was, again, like Spotify, it was built off of what you gave it. So if it knew that you liked crime dramas, it would give you the characters that were there.
Right.
And like, perfect example, my wife's Netflix and mine, this is not recorded, so my wife doesn't know.
I'm going to tell her.
You will tell her. If you look at my Netflix, it's probably, because my kids watch it, it's more like anime and weird stuff, but if you look at my wife, you would think she was a drug trafficking prison warden who likes Middle Eastern, you know what I mean?
Right,
Middle Eastern issues.
Right.
But
the,
again,
the other thing that's really interesting, though, as we started to compare notes on this, is that they would, the marketing was so sophisticated that as they might present, Kwaku and I both, the movie 48 Hours, which was in the segment that he showed earlier, for me, Nick Nolte might be forward. For him, Eddie Murphy might be forward, right? That it was so sophisticated that it could say, Matt, you are a white man. I'm going to bring you the white man. Kwaku, you're a black man. I'm going to bring you the black man.
and that's only because you watch Downton Abbey.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. All right, so Disney is another really interesting example. How many have kids in the room? Okay, quite a few of you. How many have been to a Disney movie or watched a Disney movie, maybe streaming, et cetera, with your kids? The really interesting thing that Disney realized several years ago, not by the way the first movies, the Bambis and the Snow Whites and all those, but the more sophisticated, more advanced, more current movies. Super, super interesting thing going on. Disney realized that the parents were watching these films too, and that they wanted to give the parents something to acknowledge their participation in this. So they hid Easter eggs. And so those of you who are parents are watching these films and you're taking something out of the films that your kids aren't getting. So in Aladdin, Robin Williams as the genie can joke about size doesn't matter, yuck, yuck, yuck. The parents get it, flies over the kid's head. They have no concept of what that means. It's just a funny line, or maybe not. What does it mean, Matt? Good Lord.
We got a heckler, I love it.
We do have a heckler.
So the key takeaway is success comes from adapting authentically without losing your brand identity.
Yeah.
In all of these, whether it be Nike or whatever, they kept to the core of who they were.
Yeah.
But they could talk to multiple people in the way that they needed to hear it.
So how does it relate to destinations? Because we think it does, and we think that there is a very real opportunity for destinations to take advantage of this kind of thinking and apply it to their marketing, if they're doing it right.
I think it goes back to what you guys were saying earlier in the Madden presentation, which was done very well by our team. But the first thing you have to realize as a destination, you're not just a destination. You are a brand. Now that means that you're more than just a place. You're more than the restaurants. You're more than all of those things.
Yep.
It's all about one key thing, all of those aspects. It's all about the feeling that you evoke,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
Because that's the one thing, because I don't come from the destination marketing field. I come from sports and entertainment. So getting here, it was very, you're laughing. What are you laughing for?
It's just funny to me. Of course you're sports and entertainment. Tell us about your NBA experience. And by the way,
Anyway.
he's also a Grammy-nominated songwriter.
See,
True. He is. I'm sports and entertainment.
this is impromptu. He's not supposed to do that, guys. No, but with that though, I remember getting into the field, and you were working with me about that. But it was all about. But every place has the same thing. Every place has breweries, restaurants, outdoors.
Vibrant, thriving neighborhoods.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
And I remembered being extremely frustrated about it. And you coached me through that whole thing. So I'm not going to be mean to you. I'm going to be nice. You coached me through all of that. Because in a moment of frustration, I had written this thing to you and sent it to you.
The Jerry Maguire Manifesto.
That was my Jerry Maguire, I'm about to leave manifesto.
Yeah.
But again, it was all about feelings, because I was starting to think, why will somebody go to Disneyland 12 times? Why will somebody visit the same place over and over again? It's not about the place more than it is about the feeling.
Yeah. So we talk a lot about the relationship between products, and I mentioned a little bit of this earlier. Products, a hotel room, for example, or a restaurant reservation, or an attraction ticket, a ferry ticket, whatever it might be, museum ticket. Those are all products. In the same way that if I'm going out to buy a car, I'm buying a Jeep, or I'm buying a computer, or I'm buying a tent, right? Those are the products that I'm buying. But interestingly, there are brands that I'm buying as well. I'm buying the product of the brands that are Jeep and Apple and REI. And flip to that next slide, because a product is something that you buy, but a brand is something that you buy into. Big and very important difference as all of us think about whether we're at Scales, whether we're at Visit Portland, whether we're at Third Place. There's a brand that we are all responsible for. And we're selling something because that's important in order to stay in business. But we're also wanting to convey something about who we are, what we represent, what feeling or emotion we're evoking.
Yeah, and you said Scales, which is interesting because it makes me think something.
Yeah.
And I'm not just saying this because you're in the room, but there was something magical that happened to me when I ate those scallops the other night.
Yep.
And it wasn't just about the plate, it
Yep.
was about the moment.
Yeah.
So it's always going to be that place for me now because the feeling that it evokes. So
Yep.
thank you guys for
Yep.
that.
Yep.
But again,
Yeah.
we landed on people travel to be somewhere different, but they also travel to feel something.
Yep. And I said this morning, but some of this bears repeating. By visiting a destination, visitors are buying the products, they're also buying into the values and the feelings that that destination evokes. And this Maya Angelou quote, again, that I shared this morning, has become really central to how we do what we do with the destination brands that we work with. People will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. So again, for a restaurant, for an attraction, for a museum, for an experience, how are you making them feel? Emotion is the thing that people are basing decisions on far more than they're basing decisions on rational things. They are making decisions, in particular big purchase decisions like vacations, based on emotion.
So we've said all of that, and I know you guys are like, let's get to what code switching is and the formula. So we created a formula for you. Starts with context. You have to understand the platform and the audience expectations. So you can't communicate to somebody on TikTok like you communicate to somebody on Instagram, like you communicate to somebody in out of home, like you communicate to somebody just in print. You can't do it the same. You have to understand the context by which you're communicating with someone.
Yeah, Amy talked this morning about the media environment in which the work would run. And that media context ends up being as important as whatever the message is that's being conveyed. So the media plays a really important role in setting the context for the way that that information is going to be received by, in this case, the visitor. The next one is culture. And again, it's that recognition of how do I align with that particular audience's values and the nuances of them as well. That I am looking at the world and I can't help it through my eyes and through my lens. What I experienced growing up, how I was born, all of that plays a role in how I'm looking at culture. I have to recognize and check the bias that I have, that what I'm doing in terms of communicating to different audiences may not be my experience anymore. It used to be. I used to be able to just fall back on that, rely on that, and just say, that's marketing. It's not anymore. I have to acknowledge culture, and I have ways now to tap into that and understand that and communicate that I never have before.
And last is consistency. Now, this is important. You got to maintain your brand's core essence. Think about the Nike example. They've got so many different people they talk to, but they're still talking to them as Nike. It's not that, okay, if I want to do an ad for an African-American community, let's just say, it's not, okay, well, let me just turn into somebody else or turn into something else or put a beat on something or, you know what I mean, have some people.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily what it is. You can communicate with me as a consumer and not lower who you are because I want to come up to your brand.
Yeah.
Your brand needs to be aspirational. It needs to be those things so you can keep that core message. So the equation is simple. Context plus culture plus consistency. If you do those things, you're actually code switching.
Here's a fun example. Kwaku found this. It's a McDonald's campaign that ran in Australia a number of years ago. And the example is not one of race. It's not one of LGBTQ. It's not one of other abled people. It's one of people who are
Well, don't tell them yet. Let them see.
Yeah? All right.
Let's see if you guys, I'll show it to
See if you get it. Yeah, right.
See if you can, and you can yell it out, see if you can figure out who they're talking to with this particular ad sample.
Nick and Chick Nuggets with barbecue sauce. Farge lies with tomato horse. Mitch kickin' and a frozen croak.
Oh, look at that.
We speak late night.
Yes, that was what it was. We speak late night. So here's why it works so well. It leveraged that universal experience of a late night, which is the context, right?
It recognized the cultural relevance of jumbled orders. These are what they're actually hearing from customers who are hopefully not going through a drive-through. Hopefully they're walking up to the front, but they're enjoying, quote unquote, a night out. That's the culture.
Now, the consistency was they did not stop being McDonald's. They used everything they had in their repertoire. They didn't create a new burger. They didn't create anything. They didn't change their colors. They just adapted their language a little bit of the same language they use, and that's consistency.
Yeah. There's a destination that we've seen recently that we think is doing it right. It is really, really hard to find a DMO that has done this well or done this right. And I think the state of Tennessee is probably the best example that I've seen. I don't know if you guys would have seen this travel guide from last year. It won multiple awards within the industry and outside the industry as well, and got recognized extensively through tourism industry press, because what they did was, instead of creating a standard tourism guide, here's a guide that is going to be shipped to adults for them to read and for them to plan their vacations, they created a kids guide. And the Kids Guide ended up being like one of those catalogs that maybe some of you saw growing up, an Amazon catalog, or depending on your age, a Sears catalog, where you were instantly transported into that world where those products were yours. They weren't your parents, they were yours. And all of a sudden, this vacation experience wasn't your parents' vacation experience, it was yours. So they went throughout the state. They found a manufacturer within the state who could make toys. And they went throughout the state and they tapped all of the big attractions and big destinations, and they created toys for each one of those. And then throughout the guide, they give you an opportunity to see what the toy was, tell you that if you go, you can get one of those toys, you can collect them all kinds of games, all kinds of postcards, all kinds of interactivity within the guide as well. But it was shipped to kids, not to parents. So the kids had a voice. Didn't change Tennessee, didn't change the brand story of places like Nashville or Dollywood or wherever, didn't change those brand stories. They were still very, very authentic. And yet it shifted the audience so that Tennessee could have a direct conversation with the kids.
So net of it is, it's all about feel. It's all about feel. It's not about your locations. It's not about your destination stuff. It's not about anything like that. That's how you reach people. You reach people by figuring out what they want to feel. So, how can you code switch? Because you're seeing all of these examples of Netflix and Nike and all of these places, but you're a destination. You're figuring out, well, how does that work for me? How do I code switch?
Yeah, you're a destination, or you're a hospitality company, or you're a hotel, or whatever. How can you do it?
One, use the formula. You got to make sure that you're using that code switching formula for maximum effectiveness. That's context plus culture plus consistency. Now, I've learned from a lot of smart people that if I say it, you'll forget it. But if you say it with me, you'll remember 85% more stuff. So let's say it. Ready? It's context. Let's one more time. All right.
Well done. Well done.
Well
Step
done. It's a
two.
good group. It's a good group.
Step two, check and recheck. And again, this is all about checking bias and all about trying to remove bias wherever it's possible. It's important to have the input from representatives of each group you're looking to target. I can't make assumptions on what I'm doing if I'm trying to reach him without talking to him. I want that, like, if there's nothing else that you take away from this, you have to check what you're doing with people of that community as much as is possible to do. Ask them if your communication is spot on or if it's tone deaf. And then, hard thing to do, believe what they tell you.
And then the next step is you release and you gather and repeat. So after you've done those first two and you've got your campaign, if you've got whatever it is that you're releasing, let it out. And then the reaction to it will give you more data so that you can use it and you can strengthen the messaging and you can keep going and going and going and spiraling upward.
You're not going to get it right perfectly the first time. You're just simply not. It's, you know, marketing is an inexact science. As much as we try to define and datafy and all of those things to what we're doing in marketing, it is and always will be an inexact science. When the internet came along, it blew up every model that existed from P&G about how many ads you needed to run, how many points you needed to run, how long you needed to run them, et cetera. And this will sell you X number of tubes of toothpaste. The internet comes along and blows everything up. So now it really is the Wild West. And this release, gather, repeat is the best that you can hope to do. It's exactly what Amy and H were talking about earlier that we're attempting to do this spring with diverse audiences for Visit Portland. We're going to try something. We're going to learn from it. We're going to gather information, and then we're going to repeat, and we're going to continue to learn and continue to get better.
So, a few final thoughts before it's time for us to go. Code switching isn't about speaking louder or speaking more. It's about speaking clearer and more directly to the right people.
Yeah, louder and speaking more can often mean, oh my God, I have to have a huge budget. So this point ends up being really, really important at this point. I'm pointing out here because I'm looking at this monitor, but you're looking at this. It's not about spending more. It's about how are you making sure that you're speaking really clearly with the message that you want to send. Authenticity, remaining true to who you are. Disney did not veer or vary from who they were by inserting Easter eggs that spoke to parents into their movies. They stayed very, very true to the core of entertainment, of magic, right? All of that magic experience transfers from the time that they interacted with the kids to the opportunities and the situations which they interacted with parents.
And some of that, though, which we found with some of our clients too, is if you don't know what your authentic voice is, then that's when you work with an agency to figure that out.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times when we're working with people, we sometimes have to kind of, instead of just jumping into a campaign, we always stop and say, what's the foundation of what we're trying to get?
Yeah.
What's the foundation of the voice? What's the brand? What are all of these things? And once you find that, that's your authenticity. You have to land on the feelings you want to evoke. Again, we're all led by feelings. It's, people don't, I always learn it this way. People don't smoke cigarettes because they like the taste of a cigarette. There's a feeling behind it. There's something behind it that they're going after, and the cigarette is the vehicle. So the destination, the location, is the vehicle for me to get this feeling.
Wait, you're equating destinations to cigarettes? What are you doing here?
You see how I did that? That was great.
I do see how you did that.
yeah.
We're going to have to talk about your choices. Code switching is more than a secret, ultimately. And we really hope that you got something out of this. This was interesting for you. I think we're happy to take questions if we have time to do that. But it really is a superpower when you start to think about how can you communicate with different audiences in a way that they need you to speak, not in the way that you speak. That's it, right?
Yeah.
Question? The headroom is weird. It's not bad, it's just weird.
No, I cannot. No, no, I cannot.
Yeah. Give me a little bit more of an example.
Okay, so my example would be a competitive comp set of hotels on an island and trying to out-frequent each other with email marketing. What would be a better approach to speaking louder and more, and why is speaking louder and more not the answer?
Man, that's a question that I wish Amy was on stage for, because she could probably deliver this much better than I would. I think I'd probably say that the answer is going to be locked up in who you decide is the most valuable and has the most long-term value for you as a potential customer, as a potential visitor. Because again, it's not about speaking louder or more to everyone. As Kwaku was saying, I want you to talk to me, right? So in your case, who's me? Who are you talking to? What can you learn based on your current guests and your current product of what that profile is, what that persona is, and then how can I more accurately reach those? Again, not by shouting to everybody, but by speaking directly to each one of them individually. Does that make sense? Does that sort of answer your question? Amy, would you?
I think one addition would be quality of your, specifically email content, because you want to be the email they're actually going to open.
Yeah.
You want to have quality content that they actually want to read. So maybe they're getting your email once a month, but they're not even opening the emails that they're getting daily or weekly. So I think that's the
great.
important part of make sure you're sharing something really insightful or interesting to make your property stand out a little bit more.
That's great. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. You guys have so clearly found your authentic voice. So great job.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
For those of us who are in nonprofits where we haven't quite or are trying to rediscover our authentic voice, the part of our marketing that remains consistent through code switching, what steps would you go through to find that authentic voice as an organization, as
You want to take it?
Go for it, go for it.
Oh, sure, of course.
Go for it.
There is it's a long answer. I mean, to be honest with you, it's probably not a short answer.
Bundle
It's
it,
not,
bundle it.
I know, bundle it.
Bundle it.
It is, oftentimes the best way to do that is to work with an objective partner that is outside your organization who understands how to do that. So doing it within an organization, unless people there, an individual there is particularly skilled in truly understanding, capturing, sort of uncovering and revealing a brand, is really hard to do. Working with an objective third-party partner oftentimes can bring to the group a way to think about their organization, the product or service that they deliver, their audience, in a way that the organization couldn't come up with itself. So like the super short answer is, see if you can find someone who can really help you objectively truly understand your brand. Because again, you're not looking at the product, you're looking at what is the experience that you want people to have, what's the feeling that you want to evoke in those people, and then from your leadership to your staff, how are you fully understanding how those people are going to best tell that story?
Yeah, and it goes back, and what do you embody?
Yeah.
Like, one of the great things is a stakeholder group as well. Because they'll tell you, because if you're thinking about, like you're saying, if you're thinking about it internally, that's when it becomes difficult. Because you're like, who are we, what are we? And then you've got 9 different people, and then you've got leadership that's saying this. And a lot of times that what you'll find is there's a gap between who you think you are internally and what you're perceived as externally. So when you get that person in the middle who can kind of guide you and tell you the truth about who you are, that's how you find the voice.
Yeah, yeah.
And you, again, like you said, you got to believe them.
Yep, yep, for sure. I would point to the third row here, Greer from Words from the Woods, may be a really interesting person to talk to. It's a great local agency, and I think they were just talking about taking on some pro bono, weren't you? Like,
Wow.
Did I
There
hear
you
that
go.
right? Or have Moran call me on that one? Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, Jim.
Just some positive feedback.
Yeah.
I love the McDonald's ad.
Yeah.
And the Nike, and I love that it was consistent with their product.
Yep.
But their message was unique.
Yeah.
Well-being.
Yeah, yeah.
And the beautiful thing, they ran those where you didn't see where they ran. They actually ran them on like bus shelters.
Shelters, right.
So they were catching people in that moment,
Right.
which was really, really cool.
Right, exactly.
Get a late night McDonald's fucking meal.
Exactly right. How about a late night DeMillo's meal? Oh, see? the last thing you want is to be on a ship when you're drunk, right? Yeah. Yeah, right, exactly. What else? Other questions? No questions from you, mister? Yeah, you. Yeah, no, I'd love to hear your questions. Everybody know Tay? Tay Chong, Maine Chamber of Commerce, and really, like, in your own right, a multicultural marketing expert, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
but not celebrating the fact that we have a 50% increase in Hispanic tourists and 50% increase in Asian tourists, and their numbers are twice as big as Canada.
That's a great question. Next question? I'm not going to do that to you. I love the fact that you challenge me, but I also love the fact that you challenge the industry in questions like that. And you do it in a really productive and constructive way. Because there's a way to do it which is really destructive, and you do it in a really constructive way. No, I can't. Absolutely not. Kay, I don't know that I know the answer to that. Genuinely, I don't know that I know the answer to that. What I know is that we show up as one of the, if not the whitest states in the country. And there's an easy place to fall, which is we're white, we're going to communicate with white people, right? That's not just a Portland thing, that's a state thing. Same thing is happening in Vermont, same thing is happening in New Hampshire. That's who we know, that's what we look like, that's what we're going to continue to do, right? Data matters. So all of that data that you just shared matters. When we start thinking about that very last slide, what was the gather, the next one?
Repeat.
Yeah.
Release, repeat.
Yeah, gather, release, repeat, release, gather. When we start doing that, that is about getting the information from a marketing standpoint, not just the numbers of people that are coming and the growth that we're seeing in Hispanic or Asian, but how are we then tapping into those? What are we doing to start accessing that? And I really do believe, like genuinely believe, that A, we kind of have to start somewhere. So we're starting with the audiences that Amy talked about this morning, saying we're going to dip our toe in the water and we're going to see what that's going to feel like. And then as we start to learn, we're going to build some content out. And hopefully what will happen is that it will start growing like this. That as we learn more, we'll learn what audiences we need to pay attention to and what audiences we don't. We'll create content for those that we think that is really important to pay attention to and where we think the product opportunity exists in order to grow those audiences. It can never happen, unfortunately, overnight where you go one day, we've got nothing, and then the next day we've got everything. And you've got hoteliers in the room who will tell you, I'm not building a new hotel until I see the demand, right? That's where that investment comes in. So we've got to build that demand sort of over time. And not just for our hotels, but really for everything, right? So we're building demand over time based on the product and then the way that we're telling the story.
And you were talking about how to do it. I think that we were talking upstairs. You have a huge passion for it. So put together the white paper. Put together that thing that says these are the statistics. And then walk them in.
Oh, that exists.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that.
And walk them in.
Yeah.
And keep walking them in.
Yeah.
Because like Matt's saying, it might not be an overnight fix, but it's going to be a fix if you continue to be passionate about it. And I'm glad you are.
Yeah. Does that answer your question sort of as much as I maybe can at this point? Thanks again for asking that. What else? How about you five in the middle? Questions from you? No? Does this make sense to you? Resonate with you? Yeah, Cecil.
Yeah, I guess just thinking about the Portland marketing strategy within the Portland Palladium, how are you guys kind of applying some of these coaches and concepts to what the Portland kind of putting together?
Yeah.
How is it coming into play?
Yeah, so that's the diversity plan that Amy and H and Dana sort of talked about this morning. That we're gonna start testing some of the consistent some of the messages that we're currently using, hopefully utilizing some new imagery that the Visit Portland team just captured, push that out to new places, see what we're learning, see what we're gathering, use that data to create content that is relevant for them, and see what happens then as a result of that. Based on that, start to push out more. Push out to those consistent audiences to grow, where we're starting to see the opportunity and starting to explore into new ones. Because again, we can't do everyone all at once, right? I wish that it was just simply about, we just need more money and we could talk to everyone, but it's just a smart approach to say, let's learn along the way and grow our knowledge at the same time that we're growing the audience. Make sense? Answer your question? Yeah. Can somebody ask a question of Kwaku?
No,
I
love listening to you
How did he
talk.
get so handsome? Something like that?
Wow, thanks, Matt.
Either one of you could answer my question. It's a short but merry season here in Greater Portland. And, there's a workforce issue, so many owner-operators are hands-on every day. The marketing plan will get launched, and it will just stay in place for the season. Are there hashtags or keywords that you guys are going to be sharing or allowing Visit Portland to share with the rest of us as you learn and gather data and information that we might be able to add into our efforts to make it a better season for everybody?
Yeah,
I'll answer that one.
yeah, sure.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
She said it was short. She said it was
she
short.
did. I could say it a lot longer, but that's essentially the answer.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yes, and that would be something that the team will take back and figure out how we incorporate working with Lynn and Dave, for sure. Yeah, let me come back here and then come back to you.
Yeah, just to build on what Tay was talking
Yeah.
about, the Asian.
Don't build on what Tay was talking
Yeah,
about,
no,
God.
Well, because he's at the 30,000 view.
Yeah,
Look, and I am one guest at a time.
sure.
So I'm working the dining room in hospitality.
Yep,
Right.
I'm visiting tables, finding out how everybody's happy. But I've got to make sure that I don't slight anybody that is, a marginalized population. An African-American party comes to the dining room, they're like the only black people in the room.
sure.
And I have to make sure that I am there to welcome them.
Absolutely.
And make them feel. And the Asian visitors are huge in our area.
Yep, sure.
So
Sure.
one table at a time.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, look, again, I joke with Tay a fair amount now, but I give him extraordinary props for the way that the again, productive, constructive way that he is talking about evolving Maine's and specifically Portland's visitor industry. And one of the things that he has talked about, and I know we've talked about quite a bit as well, is what does a training program look like for the hospitality group? What does a training program look like so that your staff, when an Asian party walks in, or a black party walks in for that matter, or whoever walks in, that your staff is prepared to welcome them in the way that they want to be welcomed. I spent a bunch of years in San Francisco, ran marketing for the San Francisco Travel Association for a number of years. And that was during the time when China was really on a tear coming to the US. Pre-pandemic, obviously, and well before sort of a lot of those international flights stopped. But the Visit California, the statewide organization, ran a program called China Ready, which was how do we prepare restaurants, hotels for this massive influx that we're going to see of Chinese visitors. Because it's a fundamentally different visitor than me or than him.
Yeah.
And how are you preparing for that? Do you have slippers in the rooms? Do you have tea in the rooms? All of those things become really essential. So for that, for your staff, that training that Tay is talking about could be incredibly valuable, and frankly for anybody in the room who's offering some kind of experience and sees quote unquote diverse visitors, international or otherwise. Yeah.
That actually segues really perfectly into the question I was going to ask, which is how do you train not just staff but volunteers or other team members to be more responsive and hospitable? How do you train them to coach with, especially when in our case we are a nonprofit with a lot of volunteers who work with our organization, and often they are, as most volunteers are, they're retired.
Sure.
They're moving into the next stage of the work that they do. And they have either grown up in a culture where coaching was not a thing,
Yeah.
or have simply just never engaged in it. So
Yeah.
how do you talk about it in an educational way with kind of the second tier down on the rung?
Sure. Number one, I think it has to be an absolute mandatory from leadership. They have to recognize that it is fundamental to who you are, that anybody who is going to be customer facing is going to be trained. When you talk about some of the staff or the volunteers that you currently have, in the San Francisco Visitor Center, for example, for a number of years, we had brought in a number of volunteers, and they knew certain areas of San Francisco really well, but similar maybe to how you're talking about it, they weren't prepared, they weren't learning about that next generation of visitors that was coming in and what experience they wanted. So we made it a mandatory from leadership that was essential to that visitor center staying alive. That if we weren't adapting to the visitor, then the visitor center was going to go away. And those volunteers really, they were basically given a choice: learn, adapt, or move out.
But interestingly enough, though, for me, I've always believed that good customer service transcends race and
Oh yeah, for sure.
sexual orientation
For sure.
and everything.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, if you're interested in being good to a person and spreading that good, then I'll learn how to talk to you. Because that'll open up the conversation between us. I learned last night about issues that are facing single white mothers that I never knew. But I have a customer service mindset. So it's whatever, how do I serve you? That's the first thing. That's how you teach it. That's the first part of Coach Week. How do I serve you? How do I serve you?
There's so many jokes about that, I can hardly
Oh,
stand
God, no.
it. What else? Any other questions from anybody? These questions have been great. Yeah, Kalita. Yep. And you're essentially talking about the difference in language, right? That we used to call it sustainable, and that word has been attached to or had negative connotations added to it, and so now we're switching to responsible. Is that what I'm hearing? No. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. 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 I don't know that I totally have an answer for you. I do know that oftentimes, again, whether you're telling the story first or you've got a product first, there has to be a decision made there, right? You're telling a story first and people come and the experience is not what you gave them, right? So somehow a product first is really important, but then you build a product and you don't have the marketing to drive people to it, right? So that's where you have to start seeing this. And if you have product in Maine that you're talking about, and you do, to tell a sort of responsible, sustainable, eco story to the really large numbers of people around the world who seek a more sustainable experience when they're traveling, that's where you get to start to go like this. And you get to work with folks like Visit Portland who can help tell that story and push your message out there on a regular basis. Yep. Is that it? You guys, thank you. Really great audience.
Thank you. Don't go anywhere because we're going to do the prizes, and we'll do it quickly. Thank you, Matt and Kwaku. I really appreciate it. I was thinking, I wish I would have reorged the day and done you guys right before lunch and pushed lunch a little later, because I think it was incredibly valuable, and it tied in everything that Matt and Coraggio and everyone, all the work that we're going to do this coming year and longer. We have a lot of work to do. So I'm grateful for your partnership, that you guys are going to guide us in the right direction. So let's do some prizes, and then we can get you guys out of here. Okay, so Flight New Media has a complimentary website strategy audit, and that is going to Denise Beck. Did I see Denise? Yay. Float Harder has a 2-pack of float sessions. Aaron Lasky? Yes. 2 free Dine memberships from Dine in New England. Katie Mackey? Good. We picked multiple winners to make sure that you guys were in the room. Some people missed out and number 2 got chosen. Maine Life Media gift basket filled with Maine Life swag. Ashley Virgilio? Spoons. Ah. Kennebec Savings, a Rhodey 1500 hard cooler. It's $200 value. This is a nice one. Cecil. Nice. Wooler and Company, a 30-minute headshot refresh session. Carol Walker, a 10. Do I say your last name correctly? A 10. There you are. I should know that, but. Maine Office of Tourism, sea bags, bucket bag filled with Maine products. Flo. Flo Layton. Yay. Yankee Publishing, a custom branded interview in Yankee Magazine's New Englanders to Know feature. Topaz Smith. That's a big one. USM, $500 gift certificate for an event rental. Catherine with Maine Tourism Association. I just saw her. Is she here? Okay, perfect. Human Interest, Wine Chocolate Swag. Steve DeMillo. Local IQ, portable coffee maker. Jeff Gambardella. And Real Maine Weddings, gift basket, Dylan. Yes. Okay, the iPad. Very excited about this. All right, you can draw it. Perfect. Okay. Shuffle them around. This is brand new too. We just bought it. Krista McAllister, Northeast Charter. Ah! First one and you stayed. Nice. You all, thank you so much. I appreciate your time and attention. I hope you had a great day. Have a wonderful afternoon.